best to you from Kmart Radio. KMRT.
Welcome to another episode of the podcast about broken music. What is broken music? It's the weird, the wonderful, the terrible, and the misunderstood. So let's get into it. Today, we're actually going to do a record that is good. In fact, it's very good. And I know it's very good because I like it. It is Macintosh Plus with her record, or I guess the record Floral Shoppe.
Or as I like to call it, Floral Shoppe.
Floral Shoppe.
Because it has an extra PE.
Yeah. It's the first recognized Vaporwave album. We're going to get into that. Okay, this is going to sound a little stilted. What I'm going to do is I'm going to read part of my review because it gives a good backstory as to how this even may have come about and why it caught on so well, okay? At the dawn of the 1990s, there was a record that caused a furor in industry types and yucks in the few who actually heard the thing. Plunderphonic by Canadian avant-garde composer John Oswald took unauthorized samples of major artists, Michael Jackson, Beatles, Doors, Captain Beefheart, Metallica, Stravinsky, etc., and built entirely new compositions out of them. In 1989, at a time when the music industry decided that if it couldn't outright kill hip-hop and its quote-unquote music-thieving ways, it sure as hell was going to get its pound of skin. Plunderphonic was a bald-faced provocation. With a quickness, their bat lawyers swooped down from RIAA Mountain, stopping the scoundrel Oswald from further damaging the industry with his dangerous ideas of art. But it was too damn late. The pirate music genie flew out of the bottle that was Oswald's head and roamed free, infecting other artistic assholes like Negativland and VVM, making pop stars and celebrities sound like even bigger assholes, or worse, interesting. Fast forward to the 2000s. Hip-hop is the most popular form of music on earth. While the industry was busy gut-punching artists too poor to get proper sample clearance, straight-up music piracy crept up from behind and shoved a sharpened spoon deep into its kidney. Barely staving off the attack, the music industry found itself on life support, sustained by a new sort of health insurance known as music streaming. Consequently, it's in no shape to pick a fight with the increasingly popular bastard children of Plunderphonic, the so-called Vaporwave. While a good portion of Plunderphonics was built on a satire of the artist being plundered and a political question about what constitutes free use in art, Vaporwave had different aims. First of all, when I say bastard children, I'm not being cute. It's unlikely that any of Vaporwave's teenage pioneers were aware of Oswald's trailblazing from 20 years prior when they were starting out. In fact, their touchstones are the following. Daniel Winotrick's Point Never Lopatton's 2010 release, Chuck Person's Echo Jams Volume 1, a juddering piece of Plunderphonics that evoked an uneasy, drugged pop nostalgia and video game art fetishism, and the ultra-prolific James Ferraro's Farside Virtual, a journey across a MIDI hellscape of bisected cheese, the type you'd hear in the background of PBS documentaries or cartoons aimed at toddlers. Cartoons aimed at toddlers. Cartoons aimed at toddlers.
Cartoons aimed at toddlers.
Clearly, these struck a chord with Ramona and or Xavier, whose album Floral Shoppe, under the guise of Mac Plus, aka Macintosh Plus, which is the main. What the fuck is this?
It's wanting you to. It's in the fucking way.
Yeah, I know.
Piece of shit. That's forward on this fucking site. This is the main point of discussion here. Secondly, the early Vaporwave often used loops of the type of bloodless pop and jazz funk library music one would normally hear in the background of corporate instructional videos, leading to the belief, and soon enough the implementation of, a stated anti-corporate stance within a small but growing scene. I don't know, but I doubt Xavier had any of that in mind when she unleashed the genre bomb that is Floral Shoppe upon an absolutely receptive internet audience. I think she was just having some fun. But intentions don't matter, as what she did was inadvertently ignite the new punk in Vaporwave. The reasons are evident almost immediately. While the sound of Echo Jams and Farside Virtual are conceptually tight, they can be arduous to listen to. Floral Shoppe, conversely, adds a stronger sense of quote-unquote pop to the plunderphonic methodology that constructs its song order to work in an album format, adding to the notion that these are pop songs and not just pirate art. There's a sense that Xavier actually likes the music that she's jamming. The same can't be said for Oswald, who seemed to take joy in smashing pop star egos to bits. There's no mystery nor mistake as to why this album launched the invisible revolution that is Vaporwave. And for that, I thank you, Ramona Xavier. This is the new youth revolution that I've been waiting for. All right, this is Mars Hottentot.
And this is VHS.
This is the podcast about broken music. What is broken music? Broken music is the weird, the wonderful, the painful, and the discombobulated. Okay, VHS, we're discussing Macintosh Plus's Floral Shoppe. Any opening thoughts on this?
Well, I can remember exactly when and where I was when I heard this for the first time. I guess it's one of those albums that you remember where you were the first time you heard it because it's so singular. And I was painting ductwork in my apartment the night that I listened to this. And we had really high ceilings, so I was up on this really tall ladder trying to paint ductwork while listening to this, and I felt like the album gave me motion sickness. And I felt so weird that I felt like I might fall off the ladder, like I was getting some vertigo. I'm way up, and I'm listening to this album that was a new listening experience for me, because I feel like this type of music is probably the kind of music that my brain wants to turn off immediately because of the loops being on a weird time signature that I think growing up listening to CDs, it was like a skipping CD, but not in a pleasant way. So my initial reaction to it was intrigued, yet at the same time kind of queasy.
Yeah, I think as listeners to Western music, we are conditioned to want that 4/4 beat, and definitely the edits and loops on here, they don't always go in 4/4. That doesn't mean that they don't work. I would say Chopped and Screwed is another thing that, you know, if you went back 40 years and said, oh yeah, in like, 12, 15 years, there's going to be an entire genre of people mixing records at extremely slow speeds, you'd be like, that's ridiculous, because all little kids with a record player back then, you'd play a record slow and hear the monster voice, you'd laugh, but you wouldn't listen to the whole thing. And it's just like a skipping CD. Like, yeah, it's funny, but you wouldn't listen to the whole thing. But as we go further into time, like, people are seeing the possibilities of that and the art that's in there, the strangeness and whatnot. And I agree. Definitely bizarre, but here we are.
I think the thing that made it listenable to me is that having grown up in the 80s myself, was that there's a bit of nostalgia in it. So it was at one point, like, it was familiar yet alien.
Yeah.
You know?
It definitely Ramona is making these things that are kind of rote and boring, at least to a noise rocker's ears. Older music from the 80s, making it alien, strange, interesting, psychedelic, surreal, something that you would not have thought was even there, suddenly is there. I also think a lot of times she chooses songs that have, if they have vocals in them, they have someone whose voice actually sounds really good slowed down. Sade's voice sounds great slowed down. Some female voices that are very high-pitched in real life actually sound like a male voice when slowed down, but is still very smooth and musical. So that kind of takes away maybe the goofy edge that you would get from playing like a 45 at 33 or something like that. Yeah, it's definitely, for a Gen Xer, it was like, I can't believe this, but I got that from listening to Farside Virtual by James Ferraro as well. Listening to that, I'm like, this is like Muzak. It's like Muzak. It's demented Muzak, but I couldn't believe it. But the more you listen to it, the more its strange gifts are unearthed. Yeah. So I do want to talk a little bit, and I don't know. I have not read any interviews with Ramona Xavier, so I can't really say what her thoughts on this were or are, but I want to talk a little bit about Vaporwave being the idea of a new punk, not in the sense of punk rock music, but a new youth music that is confounding to older generations and is also not easily commodifiable. The music is all sampled from old pop music, typically jazz, funk, R&B, maybe a little bit of new wave here and there, but it's all copyrighted music. Vaporwave artists, including Macintosh Plus, didn't get sample clearance for any of this. As it's blown up and become more popular, it can't be commodified. It can't be punk rock or, say, grunge, which was out for 2 years before it got eaten up and spit back out as a commodified product. The music, it just can't. It's illegal music. And that's one of the things I really like about it. But the visuals, on the other hand, the visual aesthetics of Vaporwave have been completely commodified by the larger culture, which I don't even know if they're aware of it.
One thing about, you're talking about it being almost a new version of punk. I kind of feel like maybe it's more punk than punk because this is almost unable to be commodified. I mean, you're not going to hear this. You're not going to hear this on the radio. You're not going to hear a Vaporwave top 40 hit.
And and also in another equivalence of punk, anyone can do it. If you have a computer, you can get enough free programs to not even a computer. You can do this on your phone. Enough things on your phone, programs on your phone, to make your own Vaporwave. It takes no musical skill. There are so many different iterations of Vaporwave. There's like ambient Vaporwave, there's harsh Vaporwave, which is literally just taking songs and chopping them up in the most crude ways that aren't musical at all. It's actually more like the old plunderphonic style. It's very, very much like punk, but as you're saying, actually more punk than punk. It's also annoying. It's annoying to older people. It's annoying to normies that don't get it or think that now that everybody's on the internet, everybody likes to think that they get everything. So, but there's still those people that are just, anybody can do it. It's stupid. It's fucking annoying. And it's true. A long time ago, had bought the catalog of a label on Bandcamp. They had some sale. I think it cost $4 to get their whole catalog. It was like 300-400 records. I didn't realize that I was getting 300 or 400 records. Just because you can do something doesn't mean you should. And that's one thing about Vaporwave. There are millions of Vaporwave records. Only a fraction of those are actually worth hearing, I think. Most of them I don't know. I'm a Gen Xer. What am I talking about? I don't know. But yeah, absolutely the new punk. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about the visual aesthetics of Macintosh Plus and then subsequently Vaporwave.
So I will say that probably my first introduction to the visual aspects of Vaporwave came, I think it was Rihanna. Was it Rihanna that performed on Saturday Night Live in front of a green screen?
Yeah.
And had all of these kind of classic touchstones of Vaporwave iconography. These like floating statues and like just weird like checkerboard stuff. And, yeah.
But very much the statues, the color palette, I think, especially has bled over into a lot of other genres, which are easier to commodify. Synthwave has got a lot of ideas visually from Vaporwave. The pinks, the color palettes mostly.
Yeah.
A lot of pink, a lot of blue, magentas, pinkish reds, that type of thing. It's all supposed to be ironic and silly. I'm not going to lie and say I understand all of it. I don't understand the Greek statuette thing, other than Ramona used it.
So the statuette, to me, maybe I'm reading too much into it. Maybe I'm trying to pull more meaning out of this than there is. But the idea that the Greek statuettes are like something that's like an old artifact from a culture that's dead.
Maybe.
And so the whole idea of a lot of this is pulling this old music that has been forgotten,
absolutely.
and representing it, and it's something from a culture that's just has no more relevance.
Yeah, true. You're probably right. Yeah, I don't know.
So they're musical statues that they are presenting.
Yeah. The statues, most especially, I think, has gone on throughout all of the iterations that I've seen. There's a lot of, 80s loom large, 90s loom large. Maybe the 90s loom a little bit larger, I think, than the 80s do. There's a lot of Japanese katakana that gets used in names, a lot of the names. Okay, so for internet genres, that was a big thing, was having names that were hard to look up. If you're using English Google, it's really hard to look up some, like, say, Witch House bands from, like, 2012 to 2015 because they use all this Unicode in the names. It's almost impossible to even remember how to type it on your keyboard, much less find it. Vaporwave also has a lot of groups that would use, like Mac Plus did, katakana, which is phonetic Japanese. It's how Japanese people read and sound out loan words from other cultures. So she has the katakana for plus or pros, and that has carried on. Vaporwave acts love to use katakana in their names. If you don't know how to type in that on your keyboard, you're going to have a hard time looking that up. So it's another way that it's
kind of hard for some asshole to commodify it.
Because you can't even find it. Getting back to the record, and speaking of katakana, most of the songs are in katakana. But old Marzi loves Japanese video games and had his PlayStation 2 modified to play them way back in the day. And I had to learn katakana to read a lot of the prompts and menus and whatnot. So I was able to read a lot of this stuff. Boot. Xavier takes subsequent Vaporwave favorite Sade. She sounds just as good slow as she does normally, like I said earlier, on an echo jam. But as weird as it gets, there are repeated, pleasurable motifs. That's the very soul of pop music. Yeah, Sade's voice sounds great no matter how you play it. And as you were saying while we were discussing what we were going to talk about, you said this was really jarring upon first listen.
Yeah, so the first time I listened to it, I felt really, uneasy listening to it because
You wanted to shut it off?
Yeah, I wanted to shut it off because it was like, well, this is just like a bad skip. But I gave it a chance. I listened to it more and more, and the more and more I listened to it, the more I truly enjoyed it. It wasn't like a chore to listen to. I actually enjoyed listening to it. I don't know if that's what makes this kind of the classic Vaporwave album, is that it really holds up to multiple listening, and maybe, you know, having someone in there like Sade that is a classical, like successful pop star helps, you know.
Well, this record, I think, jumps into a couple different places. It does have some things that are definitely chopped pretty harshly, but the way that she's doing it is she's repeating something that is very catchy. Even if it's not right on the beat, what she's repeating is a very perfect, catchy part. And that stops being alien after a while and just starts being pleasurable.
Yeah.
So after numerous listens, you're just hearing it as it's being presented.
I feel like listening to this album, I had the same trajectories when I first listened to Flipper. Like, you know, on your first listen, you're like, oh man, this is crazy. But then, like, you have this kind of sense that there's something greater there, and then you give it more of a chance, and slowly you start to really have a great appreciation for it.
Yeah, sure. I didn't have a negative reaction to this. I had already read about it, so I kind of knew what to expect, but definitely I am one of those people that a lot of times, if I hate something on first listen because it's too alien, there's a good chance I'll love it later. So I always keep those, because maybe my headspace was wrong at that time. I need to listen to it again and reassess it, who knows. But yeah, I could see that easily.
Yeah, I feel like, you know, the hallmark of any good art is that it's going to give you that effect. If it's too saccharine, and then it probably doesn't have much staying power.
Right. Well, that's the other thing about this versus some other Vaporwave, is that if it were too song-oriented or pop, it wouldn't be interesting to me. It's sometimes a lot of those edits, those weird edits, are very avant-garde and jarring, and that's kind of what gets me off. And then not all the songs are pop songs either. Some of them are kind of these undulating, alien, ambient kind of... I hesitate to call it noise, because saying the word noise denotes something abrasive and not pleasurable to listen to. It's really not like that, but it's definitely not melodic either. You know, I guess it's not atonal. It's just, it is what it is. It's amorphous and bizarre. So it's not like the entire record is pop either. Let's see. Lisa Frank 420 / modern computers blows the lid off by building an entirely new track off of its source, Diana Ross's 1984 track, It's Your Move, creating a song that's as psychedelic and listenable as its subject art is eye-popping and cute. Do you know Lisa Frank?
Isn't she the artist that does the little monkey?
She does all kinds of like animals, cute animals, flowers and stuff, but the color palette she uses is like this really solarized and metallic glow. And once you see it, you'll never forget it. It's very psychedelic, but also very cutesy, like Macintosh Plus. So that was really cool. Plus, this is definitely one of the more poppy songs on the record. It's a lot of fun to listen to.
So in terms of this being broken music, I think it's broken, but I think it's intentionally broken.
Oh, absolutely. I'm glad that we're doing this, because this is another instance, and we've had a few, like RTX, Western Exterminator was another one, where it's good. I think it's a good record. It's not a negative record. We're not here to shit all over it. I would find that boring if every episode we did was just like, oh, this record sucks. Broken music doesn't denote bad music. It just means that it's broken. And yes, Macintosh Plus is breaking that music absolutely on purpose.
What's the artist?
It kind of reminds me as like the famous artist Ai Weiwei piece where he broke a Han Dynasty vase, where the breaking is the art, you know.
It's called Dropping a Han Dynasty Urn from 1995.
So sometimes, and then there was another one, I can't remember if it was Damien Hirst. Someone did a thing that was called Erased de Kooning, where he bought a drawing by de Kooning and erased it. So sometimes it's, the destruction is the creative part. And I feel like that's kind of where this album lands, is you are kind of destroying music, but in that destruction, you're creating a new art.
Yes, it's the old cliche. I must destroy to create! Yes. I think this is a great album, and if you have an open mind, you will also find a great album.
This just popped in my head. I think, what I would say another...
Here we go.
Another influence of this album is Max Headroom.
What? Okay, folks. Sorry it took so long to get this episode out. We actually tried to record this before, and I was having a nervous breakdown trying to read that whole preamble in the beginning, and there was like construction going on outside, and then I ended up getting into a fist fight with my cat. Pretty rough. So, anyway, thanks for tuning in. I'm Mars Hottentot.
And this is VHS.
And this has been... BROK'N music.
Broken.
Brokometer. Level buffering.
5.
Kmart shoppers. Your Kmart Pharmacy stocks a large selection of high-quality generic medications at great savings. A simple phone call to your physician can give us the approval to dispense your medications generically. If you have any questions, please stop by the pharmacy and ask our pharmacist. Again, thanks for shopping Kmart. Shoppers, many cities have local ordinances prohibiting smoking on the sales floor of a retail store. We ask that you cooperate by safely extinguishing all smoking materials in the containers provided at the entrance to the store. Thank you for not smoking.